throw, swing.
There it is, there it is. Get out, get out. All right.
Hit number 4192.
Swing on and miss. And Tom Browning has pitched a perfect game.
And a high fly ball, center field. He hit it a ton. It's gone. And the 2010 Central Division Championship belongs to the Cincinnati Reds. And Homer Bailey has pitched a no-hitter.
You're listening to the Redlegs Radio Report with Jason and Todd on Bowling Green's home of the Reds, ESPN Radio.
Good Saturday morning to you, Reds fans. It is the Redlegs Radio Report. Better play this, kind of get this out there. Yeah, it's the Kentucky Derby here in the big state of Kentucky. As I said, Jason Harbison here. We do have a little bit of sad, not a little bit, it's a lot sad news.
This is free to you.
Whoa, yeah, we had a little kind of Tinkerbell thing happening there on the soundbite. That's always good, always good. Some sad news. Good buddy Todd Smith's not with us today. Unfortunately, his mother passed away. Long battle with some illness there. So if you're of the praying kind, we definitely could use some prayers your way as Todd struggles and goes through this. His mother passed away yesterday morning, but we do have our good buddy sitting in. And thanks for coming in from the bullpen, Dru Ross. You know, kind of last minute here. Obviously, you know, Todd had some big issues going on there, so we appreciate you being here. It's been a while since you've been on, but we need to have you on pretty much every week that we possibly can, Dru. So
well, it's good to be here. It's Derby Day, and somebody this week told me at work from the last 12 derbies, it's run to 10.
Yeah. I remember last year having the whole conversation about the horses being mutters and all that kind of thing, and how it changes the whole dynamic of your betting because this horse doesn't do well in mud. I don't understand that whole thing, but evidently it's a big thing. I don't know.
Have you ever been to the Derby, Jason?
I haven't. Have you? You ever been up there in all
I've
years?
been twice, and it rained.
So was it one of the times in the past 10 years you talked about? Or?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
So now I've heard that it's like kind of a tale of two kind of halves, if you will. You've got like the millionaires row, and then you also have the people that are kind of in the infield that just want to get drunk. Is that kind of
that's exactly right?
Yeah. Is that safe bet there? So
the infield is it's something. That's all I'll say.
Is it kind of like a NASCAR kind of thing where you have all these people there and they're just kind of there? I imagine just. And I'm not trying to pigeonhole anyone, but I imagine it's kind of like a fraternity, like what you would think of like Animal House, the movie, from the late 70s.
Yeah, very similar.
Okay, that's kind of what I figured. So, yeah, I guess before I die, I have to get up there with it being just up the road in Louisville. I guess just to kind of cross it off your bucket list. So, maybe I'll go up some year. I don't know. So we could do our show live from the Kentucky Derby. You think they'd let us in, give us like press credentials, Redlegs Radio? But I don't know that the crossover though, how we could sell that. It's like. Maybe we could have some kind of themed thing with the Red. I don't know. It'd be weird. But I did see the Louisville Bats. I don't know if it's this weekend or not, Dru, but they have, how like teams will rebrand themselves for like a weekend. Of course, you've got the Bowling Green Hot Rods that are like the bootleggers, and they have this big kind of thing centered around beer sales. And they'll change their logo, they'll change their jersey, and they'll redo all of their branding, and all of the PA announcements are like, now up for the bootleggers instead of calling them the actual Hot Rods. Well, the Louisville Bats were, of course, they're the AAA team for the Cincinnati Reds. They are the mint juleps. I don't know if it's this weekend or when it is, but they've got like these hats, and it's like a little kind of cartoon. Think of like a cartoon glass with like a smiley face, and he's holding a baseball bat or something. It's a cute kind of logo, but they rebrand themselves as like the mint juleps. I assume it's around this time for the Kentucky Derby, so that's kind of the thing that they're doing. I thought that was kind of cool. I saw that on Facebook the other day. So
I'd say that'll be a hat you'll add to your collection.
We may have to add that. Yeah, I'll probably be, as I wear my Louisville Bats hat right now. I could see you doing that. And speaking of, we're really derailing the show this early, but they have this thing. It's called Copa something, and there's like 72 different minor league baseball teams do this. The Hot Rods are not part of it, but the Nashville Sounds are just to our south. And it's basically like a Hispanic heritage where they redo their logos and they redo their branding as well. And I will screw this name up, but it's like it starts with a V, and I'm not even going to pronounce it because we'll get calls of how bad it is. But the team name for the Sounds, it's those big guitars, those like, you always think of like the flamenco bands or whatever, the big fat guitars that have like the big backs to them that you would always see like the guys in the sombreros playing. whatever that is. That's what the team name is. It starts with a V. It's like Vahalos or something. I don't know. And they're rebranding themselves this weekend, and they're playing another team that's also rebranding themselves. And there's some really cool team names out there, and they're all centered around Hispanic heritage. And they're actually having like an all-you-can-eat taco bar down there, and I'm like really intrigued. I'm like, that'd be really awesome to go down there and see that. You know, if not for the tacos alone. You know, I don't know why they wouldn't do that around a Tuesday, but you know, Taco Tuesday. But anyway, so before we get too deep in the show, Corky Miller will be on with us a little bit later. We had an interview with him. Check us out online, espnradio1027.com. Also, you can check out our past shows in podcast form. Last week, we had C. Trent Rosecrans on, of course, the Reds beat writer for The Athletic. Really good interview with him. You can go back and listen to that. Next week, Drew, you may want to come back for this one. We have Sam LeCure on the show, so we'll be running some promos for that. Talk to him this week. He's looking forward to come back on the show. There's a guy you can wind up and just let go. We could probably start the interview at about 9:05 and just right up until about 9:55, he could be talking. That's the kind of guy he is.
You know, he does a good job on Reds Live.
He really does.
I mean, he really does. I think that was a good find for them. He adds to that group.
I would like to think that maybe a little bit of this show kind of pointed him that direction, because I remember when he was still a player and he was down here for, I'll still remember this moment, when he was down here for the Reds Caravan once. I asked him on the panel when we were doing our live show, and Tom Brenneman was sitting right next to me, and I said, you know, you're really good, because he picked up the mic and some fans were asking Sam LeCure some questions. And, you know, he's always, even at the time, we could tell he was really just adamant, you know, very good, very well spoken on the mic. And I asked him, I said, Sam, you know, after your playing days are over, have you ever thought about this? And like Tom pretty much interrupts me. He's like, oh my gosh, seriously, don't give this guy a big head. Oh, really? Don't give this guy a big head already. He's got, you know, he's like, yeah, I'd love to do some kind of broadcasting after my playing days are over. So I'd like to think that the Redlegs Radio Report might have had a little hand in that.
There you go.
I don't know. I'm stretching a little bit there, Drew. Anyway, last night, wow. So if you missed the game, we'll bring this up. But the Reds lost 12-11 in 11 innings. They blew an 8-0 lead, a 10-3 lead, and then in the 8th inning, they had an 11-7 lead that they blew. The bullpen just imploded, and Sonny Gray wasn't really helping himself out either with that big lead. Ouch, ouch, and ouch is the best way to say that. And I don't know, Drew, what are your thoughts on that? Other than them being on the frowning side of the scoreboard. I mean, pretty ugly game last night.
Well, I mean, you know, the bullpen's been pretty solid all year. Mm-hmm. You know, you're going to have games like that, mm-hmm. But you know, that's a tough loss, being up 8-0, you know, and then 10-3. You know, maybe they'll bounce back today.
That's the best thing about baseball. There's always the next day, you know, that you can kind of forget all about that. But to your point, Drew, the Reds were, going into last night, they had the second best ERA of all pitching staffs in Major League Baseball, including the best in the National League at 3.21. Tampa Bay is just above them, of course, in the American League, and they're at 3.07. So that's the entire pitching staff. Now, here's what's crazy about that. If you were to look back at 2018, the Reds were 24th out of 30. Now, of course, we're talking the entire year. This is still early. We're only a month into the season. But in 2018, the Reds pitching was so bad that they were 24th. Again, this is out of 30 teams. They were 29th out of 30 teams in 2017, and 28th in 2016, and then 26th in 2015. So, I mean, you just look at the way that they've turned it around, yet there's zero offense that the Reds are getting. Although last night, of course, they got all those runs. Didn't amount to anything in a win, obviously. But going into last night's game, the bullpen, the starting pitching, which I know surprised all of us because we were all talking, you know, they didn't really make any moves. We were joking off air, Drew, that they have a lot of number 4 starters of any other team out there. But surprising. I mean, they're really surprising. You look at Castillo, you look at some of those guys we were talking off air about how Malley's really turned things around as well.
Well, I think Sonny Grace, you know, last night he ran into some trouble, but he's not got a win, like you mentioned, the offense, but he's thrown the ball real well. Mm-hmm. And Castillo's been lights out. Yeah. I mean, he's looking like, you know, the ace that the Reds have been trying to find. Mm-hmm. Tanner Roark, you know, to me, he's a 4 or 5 guy. Mm-hmm. But Disco's threw the ball pretty well, too. So starting pitching, that's a positive. Yeah. But right now, they can't pick it up and hit it. No, they really can't even throw it underhand to them and hit it anywhere. But
to your point, Drew, the ERAs of Castillo. Now, of course, Castillo took home Pitcher of the Month honors this past week. So the last time that's happened, it's been about 35 years for the Reds, and I forget who actually took that home for the Reds back then. I should have probably looked that up before I said it. But anyway, Castillo is at 1.45 ERA, which is actually up a little bit because it was actually lower than that earlier in this week before he pitched his last game. This goes at 3.48. Rourke is at 4.08, and Malley is at 4.08 or 4.09 as well. So. You can't really ask for, you could ask for more. You could ask for a 0 ERA. But I think as far as surprising, I would say that the starting rotation is definitely surprising. And up until, again, last night, the Reds bullpen came in with a 3.23 ERA, but they did give up 9 runs in 6 innings last night. So, again, they were at the tops of all Major League Baseball, but just the wheels fell off. And you have to think that part of that has to go with some of the starting pitching only going maybe 5 innings, and they've taxed their bullpen. Because you look at guys like Robert Stevenson, who's really turned his career, if not season, around, and he's getting knocked around a little bit. And Lorenzen, I was talking with Todd and Scott last night via text that something's not right with him. He's been wiggling off the hook way too much. Although his numbers are okay, I just think there's something not right because he got knocked around last night. In that relief appearance as well, because he used to be kind of the guy that you could come in and count on. And again, although his numbers are okay right now, I don't know if it's something you need to keep an eye on because he's really not getting guys out at all.
No, I haven't. Lorenzen, to me, last year, he would come in, throw a lot of pitches, walk a lot of people. He's one that, he's pitched pretty well so far, but he's one that I don't have a lot of confidence out of the pen.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way too. It's almost like he's they want to get him in the lineup, obviously, for his bat. But I don't know if it's maybe a mental block for him where he can't switch gears. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to play center field maybe the last 2 innings of this game. But it's just kind of, it's mind-boggling to me, and I'm sure it's tough. I'm sure it's tough going from the mound, kind of getting hyped up there out of the bullpen, and then all of a sudden, being thrown into a game. It's like, okay, well, I got to come in here and pinch hit. Okay, so I got to kind of flip a switch in my mind. Okay, I got to get in this mindset. I got to know I got to drive this ball down the line to score this guy from second. Those kind of things. So you have to wonder if it's just maybe tough mentally for him to switch gears on that. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. It could be, but they need him for sure.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned the abysmal offense, and that's to say the least. It's really, really bad. Last night some of the moves that were made to me as well. The Bell brought in Schebler. In last night's game, Dietrich, who is really just, I think, the star of this team, although he's only hitting .250, in his limited playing, he has 2 home runs last night. He's the one that gave him basically the big 8-0 lead. I mean, he was out there flat getting it done, hit those 2 big monster home runs, and you take him out of the game, and then you take Winker out of the game, who's getting all of the other runs. So basically, those 2 guys right there, you take them out of the game for whatever defensive reasons when you're up, 10-3, 11-7, and then you bring in Schebler, who's hitting, at the time he was hitting 127, he's now down to 123, and that may have been the reason that it cost them the game. They couldn't climb out of that hole that they basically had dug for themselves.
Well, Dietrich's hit, he leads the team in home runs and ribbies. Mm-hmm. And I will say, the Reds really shored their bench up with him and Iglesias, who's obviously having to play every day with the absence of Scooter.
Right.
That was a find. That guy right there, I mean, he'd be my everyday shortstop. He's 29 years old, he gloves it, and he's hitting it. I don't think he's a 300 hitter at all,
right.
But he's been a find.
Yeah, he really has. And I don't know if you remember him playing here in town for the Hot Rods when he came up through the Rays system. But I can remember, this was 2011. We'd go down there and cover games or just go as a fan. And I remember thinking, this guy is just, he's a baller. He is one of those guys that's just gritty, the blue-collar kind of guy. The kind of guy that, Cincinnati loves. Just those blue-collar type players that gets the job done, drives the ball, up the middle, down the line, wherever it needs to be. I mean, a perfect example is they had, I think it was last week, they had this horrible shift. I say horrible, but in my mind, the shift, there was basically nobody on the third base side at all from second base to third base. There was nobody. They had the entire infield over on the right side of the infield. The outfielders were all shifted to right field. You know what he does? He lays a drag bunt down, and nobody was there. I mean, if he was a little bit faster, he probably could have made it to second by the time somebody tracked that ball down. I mean, those are the kind of things, the intangibles, although he's hitting 250. I mean, those are the intangibles that Todd talked about on the show many times that, forget your OBP or whatever Votto's known for. I'd rather have guys like that are gritty, that are getting it done. They're getting the fans out of their seats and just driving the ball in the stands and just coming in and getting the job done when he needs to.
Yeah, I think like you're saying, Dietrich and Iglesias, they two solid signings.
Yeah.
I mean, arguably they're probably their two best players right now.
Yeah.
I mean, just, from April to May. Mm-hmm. So, the Reds are, 13-19 maybe?
Yeah.
7 out. Where would they be without these two guys?
Yeah, and they're basically bench players. I mean,
Yes.
Iglesias, like you were saying, is hitting .308. He's got the highest batting average of anybody on the team right now. And really, the limited-time players are the ones that are shining. You look at Casale, who's maybe playing once or twice a week, to give Tucker's knees a break or whatnot. He's hitting .268. Dietrich, like I said, .250. And Farmer last night had that big home run off the bench. I mean, these guys, you couldn't ask more for them. And you have to wonder, well, given more regular playing time, could they sustain these numbers? Could they do even better? I have no doubt in my mind that if Dietrich got a spot every day in that lineup, that he'd be hitting well above .250 because, like I said, he's making the most of what he's got with his playing time. Imagine if he got, full-on playing time. So,
right.
Yeah, to me, I mean, that's just, like you said, the intangibles that I don't know. I'm just beside myself. I'm like, get that guy in the lineup. I tweeted this out last night. Get him in the lineup. Make things happen because he's doing it. I don't know why we're spending all of our time putting other guys out there that are, Puig probably needs to be platooned. I love Puig, but he probably needs to be platooned with what he's hitting right now. I mean, it's just, he's hitting 188. Winker's back up hitting 243. Peraza at 194. Barnhart at 192. And as I mentioned earlier, Schebler at 123. So that's your reason right there. That's why the Reds aren't doing as well as they should be on the other side of their starting pitching. So,
well, as you and I have discussed, they really miss Scooter Gennett.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy, Suarez and Scooter, two best players the Reds had last year.
Yeah.
And probably the two best this year.
Yeah, easily.
So, they miss him. They were, I think they need to sign Scooter Gennett.
I do too, yeah. And I think, there was a lot of talk in the offseason about, he's a hometown, give him a hometown discount, all this. And I mean, really, this right now should be eye-opening, especially if he comes back and just is, lights out and just kind of continues like he did the last two seasons with the Reds. I looked up his numbers. I mean, he was hitting in the 280s, close to 290 last year at this time, basically a month into the season. So you take a 280 bat out of the lineup, and again, there's only one guy that's even hitting close to that, and that's Iglesias, who is really not an everyday player at 308. I mean, you take that out of the equation, that's the reason why you're not scoring any runs.
I mean, you sign an all-star.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy's a proving all-star, hits with pop, plays gritty, tough-nosed, hard-nosed player. Yeah, you've got Nick Senzel, but Scooter is a proven all-star.
Yeah. We'll talk a little more about Nick Senzel. Of course, last night was his big debut with much fanfare, and you would have thought that Babe Ruth was coming up from for the Reds. But, hey, if you can hang your hat on something, I guess it's a good thing to hang your hat on a young man coming up making his Major League debut. We'll talk about that and much more coming up here on the Redlegs Radio Report. And don't forget that Corky Miller will be on with us a little bit later, right here on ESPN Radio 102.7 and ESPN Radio 1027.com.
If your business needs to cool, chill, or freeze, or warm, heat, or cook, you know you can't afford to disappoint. That's why you call BG Refrigeration, because BG Refrigeration never disappoints. They satisfy any heating or cooling need your business may have. Factories, restaurants, malls, plants, big industrial warehouses, doesn't matter. BG Refrigeration is who you call. Commercial heating and ducts, AC maintenance and replacement, commercial refrigeration, restaurant equipment, cold storage warehouses. BG Refrigeration ensures your heating and cooling needs are met so your business doesn't suffer. Walk-in freezers, exhaust systems, pizza ovens, ice makers, whatever heats or cools. If it's restaurant related, BG Refrigeration is by far the best company in South Central Kentucky to service them. In fact, there are few companies that can or will even try to do what BG Refrigeration does every day. They're the company that's called in for the big jobs that require more experience, that need to be done right the first time. Why would you trust your business's commercial heating and cooling needs to anyone else? Turn to the experts. Call BG Refrigeration at 270-782-5391, where your comfort is their concern.
Celebrate your child's next birthday with the Bowling Green Hot Rods. Toss a strike as your birthday child gets to throw out a ceremonial first pitch while up to 10 guests attend the party. Pizza or hot dog packages are available and include a reserved table with game tickets, Dippin' Dots to celebrate, and a special visit from either Roscoe or Axel. Call now to schedule your child's next birthday party with the Hot Rods at 901-2121. Bowling Green Hot Rods Baseball. Fun-tastic.
Clean your classic car or truck. Then join Brewster's Cruisin' for a Cure. This Tuesday, cruising will take place at Brewster's, 5 to 8 p.m., 2712 Scottsville Road. Brewster's Cruisin' for a Cure. Help out the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation and Alzheimer's Foundation, along with benefiting Hospice of Southern Kentucky. Brewster's Cruisin' for a Cure. Tuesday night at Brewster's, 5 to 8 on Scottsville Road. Bring out your classic car or truck and help out this great cause with J.C. Kirby and Son.
You wanted to see me?
Yes, please, have a seat. So here's the thing. When this company brought you on, we took a chance on you. You didn't have that 4-year college degree we typically look for.
Right.
But we gave you a shot anyway. And since then, you've worked incredibly hard and given it your all.
Thanks.
You've been an important asset to the team, but I don't think you can be an intern here anymore. We want to hire you.
You're serious?
Absolutely.
Find your next great employee. Introduce yourself to the grads of life. Who are they? Talent worth knowing about. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or even mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
I won't let you down.
I know.
Don't miss out on a resource many innovative companies have already discovered. Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
This is a Morgan & Morgan consumer message.
If you've been in a car crash or suffered an injury, this could be the most important message you'll ever hear. Almost always, the person refusing to pay you is not the person who caused the injury. It's their insurance company, State Farm, Geico, Allstate, and the like. They make billions and billions of dollars by keeping as much money as they can in their own pockets. Big companies with the deepest pockets and an army of lawyers, literally thousands. But at Morgan & Morgan, we too have an army of lawyers. And you know what else? Many of our lawyers came from the same insurance companies we now fight against. If you're injured in a car crash, slip and fall, or the victim of medical malpractice, our army will fight like hell for you. Just dial Pound Law on your cell phone. That's pound 529. Pound Law, that's all. Morgan & Morgan, forthepeople.com. Offices Bowling Green.
This is This Date in Reds Baseball, brought to you by CincinnatiUSA.com.
I know the memories of Reds fans are very long, but here's a name you might not recall. A pitcher, Cy Johnson, from the early 1930s. But on this date, May 4th, 1933, Cy Johnson almost became a name you'd remember, for he came as close as you can to pitching a perfect game. He gave up a single in the second inning, and that runner was thrown out stealing. And that was the only hit, in fact, the only base runner. Johnson faced the minimum of 27 batters, just one hitter away from the greatest pitching feat in baseball, a perfect game. Only Tom Browning has done it in Reds history. Cy Johnson, just one pitch short of the history books, this May 4th, 1933, this date in Reds baseball.
This Date in Reds Baseball with team historian Greg Rhodes is brought to you by CincinnatiUSA.com, the official travel guide of Cincinnati and Northern Kentucky. CincinnatiUSA.com.
Welcome back to the Redlegs Radio Report. Jason Harbison, good buddy Dru Ross sitting in for Todd. Thoughts and prayers go out to our buddy Todd. Had a death in the family. His mother passed away, so we're thinking about you, buddy. Todd actually said he wanted to come in this morning, but we're like, no, don't. You don't need to be here. You need to be with your family, Todd. So, thoughts go out to him and his mother. Obviously, that Todd loves so dearly, is in a better place, and she's no longer sick. So I think that's a good thing. So, anyway, we were talking about, of course, the big debut last night of Nick Senzel. He had an infield hit, Drew, with 2 walks, and he scored. But again, Reds lost 12-1. So the way they were talking, this guy was just, the next Babe Ruth coming up. And if you look back at some of the debuts of players, whether it's Chapman in recent history, Chapman or Jay Bruce, I mean, I don't know that he's ever going to measure up to that because Jay Bruce was just on fire for that. I think he went they said last night that when he debuted in 08, Jay Bruce went 3 for 4 in his first game or something with a triple and a double, and everybody was just ready to put him in the Reds Hall of Fame. And he kind of tapered off a little bit there, but I think that the future's bright for Senzel. They interviewed his dad, and I thought it was kind of funny that he was naming all these people that have been on the show before, like Doug Gray and Chad Dotson, some of those people that they're with the Reds minor league kind of blogs, if you will. And he was mentioning that. He's like, I don't even know where Doug Gray's from. Like, Doug's from right there in Cincinnati. He acted like, people were coming from all over the place when they're talking to Senzel's dad. But, just a neat moment to see that. There was a lot of hoopla around the press there before the game. They had a lot of video that they were showing before the game at the pregame kind of ceremonies, if you will. And, so hopefully that he kind of can get past that. It's like, okay, that moment's over. And we were talking too, Drew, that there's kind of a logjam in the outfield, but it's not a good kind of logjam because it's kind of tying people's hands because nobody's really on this side of Winker who's turned it around. There's really not anybody that's running away with okay, yes, besides Winker needs to be out here. So it's almost like we have all these outfielders. Of course, Kemp is injured, but you're like, well, what do you do with this guy? What do you do with that guy? So I guess that's kind of an interesting problem that Bell's going to have, especially now that Senzel's up. Yeah.
Well, I mean, your everyday outfield, I think, needs to be Winker and Senzel and Puig.
Yeah.
And then, I've not given up on Schebler. I mean, I think Schebler, he's struggling, obviously, but, he had a good year last year. Mm-hmm. And but, Matt Kemp, I'm not sure what they need to do with him.
Yeah, when he comes back, I'm not sure either. They'll probably have to platoon him or something. But, to your point on Puig, even though he is hitting 188, he's one of those intangible guys, kind of like Dietrich in my mind. Because last night he got on. I mean, he was hustling down the line. Granted, he had I think he reached on 2 different errors that happened. But Puig is just one of those guys you want to have in the lineup. He puts hind ends in seats. He's just one of those guys, whether he's licking his baseball bat or whatever crazy thing he's doing, or trying to take on the entire Pirates team in a fight, whatever he's doing. I think you need him in the lineup. Will he be a Red after the trade deadline? I have no idea, but it's just something the Reds need to get going. I don't know if hopefully it's bringing Scooter back when he gets healthy. That could be the pop that they need to kind of get them over the hump. Because if you look at what's going on, the Reds last night were playing another last place team from the West, and the Giants have had some off years here as of recent. And coming into last night's game, this was an interesting stat that I think Tom said on the air, that through 4 innings, whatever the score was, I think it was 10-3 or something like that. Maybe it was. I don't think they had scored 3 yet. Maybe it was 9-1 or something. They had already scored 4 through 4 innings. The Reds and the Giants had outscored themselves throughout the entire last week of them playing. That's how many runs they didn't get. Because if you look back at that series in New York with the Mets, the Reds got beat 1-0 on Thursday, and they beat them 1-0 on Wednesday. And it both came down to almost the last at batter, at the top of the 9th, I believe Iglesias got that home run. So, they've just been abysmal up until yesterday with just all of these runs. So it's going to be really interesting to see what the Reds do out on the West Coast when they get done with this kind of wraparound series here with the Giants.
The Central's tough. I mean, you got St. Louis. They do what it takes every year. Mm-hmm. Ozuna last year, mm-hmm. Goldsmith this year, the Cubs, big-time payroll. And then the Brewers have made a lot of nice pickups. So, mm-hmm. You want to try to stay competitive and not get too far out. But,
mm-hmm.
They're 7 out 1st of May.
Yeah, I mean, they always say you can't lose your division. You can't win your division in April, but you can definitely lose it in April. So 7 out, I mean, they're still in contention, but, man, they've really got it. And right now is the time that they can really shine because they're getting ready to go out and play Oakland, and then they're going to play San Francisco out there. Both those teams are down. Now, granted, the Reds have never historically done that well on the West Coast. It doesn't matter what kind of season a team is having out there. They've just never been able to, if they can come back, 500, so to speak, not get their record up to 500, but if they can come back winning as many as they've lost on the road, I think that'd be a successful trip for the Reds. we're still a couple weeks, many weeks out from Scooter coming back and being healthy. We asked last week on the show with C-Trent, with Wood, once he comes back, does he take somebody's spot in the rotation? Who goes down? I think those are some questions the Reds front office has to answer. Maybe not the front office, but the powers that be, if you will, for the Reds need to answer those questions because, these people are going to get healthy here in a minute, and there's some guys that really aren't producing, so there's going to be some really hard questions. People were saying, send Schebler down, bring Irving up. Irving needs to be up. The only reason that he's down is because he still has options. They brought him up a couple weeks ago, and then he's back down due to some of the length of the bullpen. They needed to get some guys up from Louisville, but, I don't know. Time's going to tell on that, and it's going to be some really interesting decisions that need to be made by the Reds.
Yeah, Irvin, he tore it up during the spring.
Yeah.
And he's he can run a little bit, good defensive player. That's just, like you mentioned, another outfielder, to try to fill a gap.
Yeah. Well, and Todd was saying, bring him up, put him at first base, or put Dietrich there and platoon Votto at first base. If Todd was here, that's what he'd be saying right now. So,
Votto's lighting it up. He's hitting 217 with 3 home runs.
He's flat. I'll go ahead and hit this here. Yeah.
Todd's hot takes.
Todd's not here for his hot take, but we'll get a hot take for him anyway. To your point, Drew, 0 for 7 last night, and he made 2 outs in the same inning in one of those really long innings that the Reds had where they, batted around because they were just driving in so many runs. So, I get your OBP. I'm down with that. I'm down with OBP. Yeah. I think we have a center for that. Yeah.
OBP.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, we got that as well. Yeah. You've come for a show today, Drew, and there's all these little funny sounders that we have here that Todd usually runs. So, but anyway, you look at his OBP, but 2.8 or 2.17, not getting it done. If you ask me.
Last year was a down year for him. He drove in 60-something runs, hit 12 home runs, hit 280, which is not bad.
Right.
But for what they're paying him. And, this year, I think Bottle's power's gone. I really do.
It has. Yeah. It's diminishing, and I think this is a sign of what we're going to see in the coming years for him. And you could, argue about his contract until you're blue in the face, and I know Todd could as well. But, there's something to be said about that. Of course, you're not going to get the power out of him that you can. I don't think that the 2010 MVP Joey Votto is ever going to come back. I think it's safe to say.
No, I agree with you. And, you and I and Todd, we've had these conversations, and I'm not wanting to bash Votto, but, you put him at Riverfront Stadium.
Oh, yeah.
His numbers would be nowhere like they are. And some of those guys that played on the Big Red Machine, if they were playing in Great American Ballpark, their numbers would be unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like Foster said on the show, we asked him, how many home runs would you hit in Great American? And he said 50 by the All-Star break.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
that was such a great saying from him there on our show, one of our big moments. Well, you're listening to the Redlegs Radio Report here on ESPN Radio 1027.com and also on ESPN 1027.com out on your car or your clock radio. People still have clock radios. If you're not awake yet and you're listening to the sound of our voice and you've got a clock radio and you don't have like your iPhone waking you up, then bully for you, good for you. Yeah, if people still have those. So we mentioned that Corky Miller was coming on. This is an interview that we had with him back at the Reds Fest, and always a great, great guy to have on the show. Todd and I had a chance to sit down with him, and one of my favorites of all time, just interviewing him because he's always funny, Drew. Anytime that we have him on the air, Todd's always going to ask the same kind of question, and it's usually not about baseball, and you'll hear that here in this interview with Corky Miller. Yeah, the one and only Corky Miller. Yeah,
hey,
right here
I'm over here
on the Redlegs Radio Report out of Bowling Green, Kentucky. Yeah, already you're not liking the setup this year. You were telling us, Corky.
Man, I feel like I'm really far away from you.
Yeah.
I liked being up close, and I know I got this microphone, but I don't know if I can hear you.
Well, the weirdest thing though is like we have facial hair this year and you don't.
Yes,
that's the weirdest thing because it's usually the other way around.
You're right. I shaved it in Movember where everybody else is growing it, like you guys I could see. I decided to shave it off and start growing it now.
All right, so what are your thoughts on the 2019 Reds, just moving forward, obviously?
Well, I see behind you got a poster of David Bell and Jesse Winker. I love David. I played for him a few years back, and I played against him, and he's it's something exciting to bring to the table, and the changes. I mean, I know, some things don't go the way the fans want them. Some things do, and I know Mr. Castellini, and I know the ownership group, and I know Dick Williams and Nick Kroll, and they want to win just as much as the fans do, and sometimes it's not as easy as going out. I mean, if I always, kind of relate it to going out to buy a new car. You kind of want to get this car. You don't want to settle for this one. You want to save up a couple years for this one and then end up getting a really nice one, and that's what we're trying to do now, and hopefully the fans are pretty excited in 2019.
Well, and it's 150 years as well for a professional baseball in Cincinnati. I mean, I've asked a couple people this, but I mean, how big of a deal is that, being the first team? Obviously, they're wearing patches, and there's 15 different jerseys and uniforms over there that they'll be wearing throughout the year. A lot going on off the field. We had Phil Castellini on a little bit earlier, and we were talking about that. It's like, hey, you're doing this. You're also having the pavilion where you're building the statues for the 1869 team. I mean, really, the Reds are doing so much off the field. What can they do on the field?
Well, that's a tough one. I mean, you want to increase the experience. Some people be like, hey, it's 150 years. I got to go see that. I mean, there's baseball fans all over the country, all over the world, and we are putting that out there. And we are 150 years into baseball. But with the offensive team that we have, I think that the biggest thing is going out and getting some experienced arms and letting our young guys learn how to pitch for the second year. I mean, Tyler Molly's going to have a year under his belt, and he's going to go out there and understand a couple more things, how to pitch, and Castillo and guys like that with Jared Hughes and David Hernandez, guys like that are going to come in and pitch. I think it's going to be a pretty cool thing for people to watch during this season.
Okay, since we've talked baseball with Corky, the obvious question's got to be coming. How many times have you watched Tombstone this year?
No, I downloaded it. I have it on my iPad. So anytime I'm on a plane or on a trip that I get bored, I just put that in, get it fired up, and get ready to do something. But I've watched it one time in 2018.
I watched it a couple times. I don't think I've caught up with you yet, though.
No, I think you're probably about 120, 150 away.
We had who was it that was on earlier with us, Todd, that said they could quote movies? Robert Stevenson was saying that he could quote movies. No, not Robert Stevenson.
Tyler Malley
was saying that he could quote movies really well. So we started kind of rapid firing some of those movies. Tombstone did come up, and he knew that Tombstone. So maybe I can't help but think that that's your coaching.
Yeah, it probably is. I've taught Tyler a whole heck of a lot about movies. Not a lot about pitching, but about movies.
Mm-hmm. So we've also asked him, too, about like some of the funny mound visits. We've asked you over the years, of course, about the facial hair, the trips in minor league baseball. But, mound visits, anything funny like that, anything like out of the Bull Durham movie.
Did you guys ask this question on Facebook yesterday?
No, we didn't.
All right. Somebody asked me on Facebook the questions for Reds Facebook page, and they asked me about the funniest mound visits. You see about Bull Durham and that whole skit about needing a live chicken and candlesticks, and and I told him my favorite mound visit was with Lance Davis. I don't know if you guys remember him, left-handed pitcher. It's got to be 2003, 2004 when he got to the big leagues. But this was in the minor leagues right before he got called up, and he was pouting for some reason in the second or third inning and just kind of nibbling and not really going after guys. And I went out there and I said, what's going on? He's like, well, I don't know. So I slapped him just right across the face, and he looked at me and he goes, thanks. And then I went back, and he ended up going 7 innings. And after the game, we had, a couple milkshakes. And we talked about it, and he still would tell me to this day that was the funnest time that he's ever had on a mound. But
I like how you swerved there and said milkshakes, because I'm sure it wasn't adult beverages at all with that. No, it was. I'm sure you guys went out for milkshakes afterward. So this is kind of a deviate a little bit here, Corky. What is something that baseball can do? I mean, you've obviously been around baseball in many different facets, whether it's a coach or playing. What are some of the things that baseball can do to kind of administer more to the younger fan, maybe this younger generation that's coming up? I've got a daughter, and she'll tell me all the time, it's like, she's 12. It's like, I can't really devote the time to that. I got to be on this. I got to be, doing Twitter or whatever. And baseball is kind of one of those old things. What are some of the things that you think baseball can change to kind of help usher in a new generation?
Well, the resources out there, if she wants to be on the phone, she wants to be on the iPad, she wants to go out, there are those apps, there are those things that you can watch that can show you a lot of different analytic things that show up on the screen. It's going to be tough to change everything to someone there in person and watching the game. I mean, even on TV, you have the K zone and you have the ball flights. I mean, golf is doing the same thing. How is it fun to watch golf when you're a young kid? It's not until you start seeing the ball flight. You start having the things maybe like, the match between Tiger and Phil Mickelson.
Phil Mickelson.
Yeah. But for baseball, it's got to be something that the parents are enthusiastic about, and bring the kids, and it will happen. I mean, we will lose fans, but we will gain fans as well because of what happens. I mean, my youngest son doesn't like to play baseball, and I'm okay with that, but my older son does. And then there's people that their parents didn't like baseball, but then people do. And then obviously there's generation after generation, as we see in the Reds fans, that come out and watch games every year.
One thing, we've interviewed you a lot. I don't think I've ever asked you. Who was your favorite team growing up and your favorite player?
In person, it was really easy for me to go watch the Angels. The Anaheim Angels, California Angels, whatever they were. Los Angeles Angels now. I mean, they just keep changing. But on TV, we watched every Dodger game. Vince Scully, listened to Vince Scully on the radio. My dad, had a old school radio, watching them on TV, muted with the radio going with Vince Scully. And Mike Scioscia was a guy that I loved watching because every time in my childhood I see him getting ran over, and I'm like, that guy's a stud. I want to do that. And obviously I've tried to emulate some of that at the plate. But the Dodgers and Angels were my team growing up in Southern California.
What's one thing you could eat like a million of? Is it like chicken wings, or this is an off the wall question? Like what's your go-to food? Like
tacos, man.
Tacos. You a big Taco Tuesday kind of guy, or anything?
Yeah, I
like
wish I had my shirt on. It's Tacosaurus.
Tacosaurus Rex or something.
Tacosaurus Rex. That's what it. I mean, I could put anything in a tortilla and eat it, and I'll make breakfast tacos without any breakfast in it. But they're in the morning, so it's breakfast pizza, but breakfast tacos for me.
I'd like to go on record here on the Redlegs Radio Report, and people, you can remember this, and you can say that you were here as soon as you're done coaching and you get out of coaching, and hopefully you're around coaching for many, many more years. Cooking show, Corky Miller cooking show. Would you guys watch that? I think that'd be a great show.
Well, I don't know if you guys were here every Reds Fest for the past 5 or 6 years, and I sneak on to cooking show on stage every year and try to host that. And last night my son came up on stage and started tasting the pork egg rolls that Mike Lorenzen and Blake Trahan started making last night. We love it. We love cooking. We love eating. It's something that I would love to do.
What was your son's? What did he think of the food that was on stage?
Well, he loved Lorenzen's egg rolls. It was smoked pork egg rolls, and they had really tight rolled with really, really good crispiness of their egg rolls. Trahan's egg rolls were kind of messy. You picked them up, all the grease started going out. So if you guys weren't there, you would have seen them go, "Hey, who won?" He goes, "He did." And it was awesome. It was an awesome thing to have him up there. We watch cooking shows all the time, so I'd love to do one.
Well, I think we can cross off our list this year. We talked Taco Tuesdays with Corky Miller on the Redlegs Radio Report. Everyone, thank Corky Miller for coming on the show with us today.
Guys.
Corky, it's always a pleasure, sir. Thank you so much.
The Junior Achievement Mini Corvette Challenge presented by Houchins Industry will race in the Bowling Green on Saturday, May 18th at the Nicely Conference Center. Enjoy exciting go-kart races from 10 to 2. New to Mini Corvette, Powell wheels. These highly modified plastic ride-on vehicles will reach crazy speeds and do battle on the same track as the Mini Corvettes. Admission is free for the 25th Annual Mini Corvette Challenge presented by Houchins Industries with support from U.S. Bank, General Motors, ESPN 102.7, and SAM 100.7. Saturday, May 18th at the Nicely Conference Center. Need more info? Go to jaforkids.com.
At the core, most any farm is a family, and I'm proud to work with my family every day.
It's hard to explain if you haven't experienced it, but farming is not just a living, it is a lifestyle.
You've got to love what you do. I love farming.
I think a lot of people are very happy to know that neighbors, people like us, are the ones raising their food.
And we want our neighbors to enjoy the same product that we serve to our family.
Kentucky Farm Families.
Feeding Kentucky.
Feeding the world.
There are songs that some people call classic rock that don't really rock. 105.3 The Point doesn't play those. Classic rock that really rocks sounds like this. When you want classic rock that really rocks, get The Point. 105.3 The Point.
You know that the ice cream scoop can make a child smile, and that by slowing us down, the traffic light can keep us going. You know that the lawnmower makes life easier, that the blood bank makes life possible. But did you know all these ideas came from the minds of African Americans? Support the United Negro College Fund, because a mind is a terrible thing to waste. Visit uncf.org or call 1-800-332-UNCF. Brought to you by UNCF and the Ad Council.
Okay, I'm on 65 right now. Which exit do I take?
You're going to want to take I-165.
No, I'm on I-65.
No, take I-165. Should be on the sign.
I'm pretty sure that's not a 1 there. I'm pretty sure that's just another I. I-65?
Aye. Well, ahoy, Polloy.
Look, I'm looking at it. I just don't see a 1 there. It's just I-6.
Suffering from post-natural confusion? See Gary Force Paint and Body Shop. iCar Gold Shop, certified with a lifetime warranty. 311 Vanderbilt Drive behind the Scottsville Road Post Office.
This Cincinnati Reds Hall of Fame moment looks at the beginning of a season and the end of an era. On Monday, April 6, 1970, the Reds lined up on the baseline at Crosley Field to celebrate opening day for the final time at the old ballpark on the west side of town.
Just about set and ready for the 1970 season to get underway. In the National League, the Reds with the traditional opener here before a packed house. Better than 30,000 will be here this afternoon. Well, we've had 58 opening days at Crosley Field, Joe. This was the 59th, and this will be the last one. The Reds moving into that new Riverfront Stadium.
Those present had no idea they were witnessing the start of a season that would see their Reds win 102 games and sweep the Pirates to get into the World Series. They did know they were getting ready to get their first look at a young manager called Sparky and a rookie shortstop named Concepcion. On the field, a big fourth inning was all the Reds needed to take care of the Montreal Expos.
Carbo hit .359 at Indianapolis last year and led the American Association. Joe Sparma, right-hander, kicks and throws. Swung on a high drive, deep right center field. That ball is well hit. Going up. It hit the light tower out in deep right center field. A home run for Bernie Carbo. Following a home run by Lee May, and the Reds take a 3-0 lead.
Bobby Tolan would also homer that inning, and the Reds would go on to win the 1970 opener 5-1. This Reds Hall of Fame moment is brought to you by the Cincinnati Reds Hall of Fame and Museum.
Welcome back to the Redlegs Radio Report. This soon-to-be soggy Saturday morning in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Of course, it's going to be a little soggy. Good buddy Dru Ross sitting in with us today. It's going to be a little soggy up there. Is it Churchill Downs? Is that the name of it?
Yes.
Yeah. In Louisville for the Derby. I believe, when is that, like 4 or 5 in the afternoon? I should know these things, probably. I know.
Yeah, 4 Central Time.
I'm sure it probably starts, probably in another 5 minutes they will probably start the pregame or whatever they call that, I guess, because it's usually on for a really long time, and they show all the people with their hats and all that good stuff.
The partying started about 6 a.m.
Probably yesterday. Most
true.
Most people probably took Friday off, and they're probably just getting an early start. So, does it actually open up like a day before, or is it the grounds only open up like
well,
today?
They have the Oaks on Friday.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
And now they have something on Thursday. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that is, but it's it's big time up there.
Hopefully, people aren't tuning into the Redlegs radio report to find out anything about the Derby. Other than I played the little kind of trumpet sound at the beginning of the show, that's the extent of our knowledge. Other than you've been twice before, Drew, of the Kentucky Derby. So I guess you have to say that you can do it once if you're a Kentuckian, just to kind of cross off your bucket list. I still have to do that. I've been down here 20 years now. You think I'd have gone once or twice, but maybe I'll do that in the coming years, but just not this year, maybe next year. Anyway, let's not forget, too, that today's game is at 6:10 Central. Rourke's going up against San Fran's Derek Rodriguez. Derek Rodriguez has a 4.35 ERA. That'll be a good game. As we were talking, Rourke has kind of had a slow start to the season, but now he's turned things around and really been a solid guy in that starting rotation for him. So hopefully he can keep things going for the Reds. Hopefully not a game like last night, where it's just like a just kind of this offense explosion. I know Rourke's probably watching that game like, hey, save some of these runs. I'm going to need them tomorrow because there's a good chance that it could be like a 1-0 win or loss. So I don't know. The other big news, of course, today actually, Drew, is on this date, 150 years ago, the Reds played their first game ever, the first professional baseball game. Now, there were a lot of games before this that was considered baseball, but it was the first professional, meaning all of the players on the team were paid. They weren't just like, two guys on the team being paid and the rest of them were farmers or teachers that had the summer off or something like that. This is the actual first game 150 years ago. So that's cool. They're wearing the throwback uniforms from 1902 tonight, and then tomorrow they'll wear their 1911. Now, tonight is the ones where they showed it last night on the game. They're like almost like a cream white. They've got collars on them, almost like these big butterfly-looking collars from the 70s, and they've got a pocket. Did you see those, Drew?
Yes,
those
I
uniforms?
have seen. Yes.
Now,
yes.
I don't know about you, but those look like they wouldn't be that comfortable to play. Obviously, they're done kind of in the new materials. They wouldn't be like in the wool or whatever they wore back then. But I don't know. To me, just having collars would be kind of weird. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sold on those, but you do have that front pocket that you can put your cigarettes in.
Yeah, that's what Tom was saying last night. Yeah. He's like, I don't know what you'd put in there, and it's like, well, maybe they'd put your cell phone in there now, I guess, or something, or your can of dip or whatever you would go in that back in the day. And then, of course, tomorrow, like I said, 1911. Those are the ones that they were like navy blue. They had like this big, huge kind of pinstripe, if you will, or like a big, banding of a red kind of thing on the bottom of the front of the hat. It's kind of weird. And they have like this old scripty kind of C on it. But the blue jerseys and pants that kind of all match are just like kind of all blue. I don't know. We're getting into aesthetics here. It sounds more like a fashion show. But I like the blue hat.
I do too.
Not a fan. You're kind of agreeing with me off air too. Not a fan of the blue uniform, the navy. Is there something wrong with that, you think, being the Reds, having all that navy?
Yeah, I don't know. They had navy back when Frank Robinson played too, back in the 60s. But yeah, all navy. Yeah, I'm not sold on those.
And I really like. I'm glad you brought that up because I've actually got one of those hats, one of my mini hats, and it was back in the late 50s, early 60s, I believe. And I always have some baseball cards of Joe Nuxall wearing that hat. It was just like it was navy blue. But the jerseys they had on were like a cream, or of course if they were on the road they were gray. So it kind of matched more. It wasn't just like one big kind of popsicle of blue there, like we're going to see tomorrow. So I don't know. And they're also doing the big pavilion there where they're dedicating that kind of on the street there that's right next to the Reds Hall of Fame. They're kind of honoring. I saw pictures of it. I haven't actually seen the actual thing. I've seen some renderings before in some of our meetings that we went up to for the Reds this January. But it looks pretty cool that they're honoring that original team. And if you get on the Reds Twitter page or their Instagram page, they have like the starting lineup, or they have all those guys named there and like what position they'd play. And it's kind of interesting to see that. And they have most of them pictured on this pavilion, the 1869 pavilion, I believe is what they're calling it. So it's pretty cool. If you get up to Great American Ballpark, check that out. So we were talking, of course, about Winker. Now, did you see this, of course, last week? You remember, Drew, that Winker almost had some nachos when he was he was going over to get a ball kind of on the foul line there. I forget where it was, if it was New York was this past week. Anyway, I forget where it was, but he went over there and almost got some nachos off some guy's plate. Well, this week he's trolling fans from New York when they were playing the Mets, and it was really cold there. There weren't a lot of fans there. So if anybody was yelling, chances are he heard it. So they were kind of giving him an earful, and then he hits like the go-ahead home run. And as he does that, he jogs out there, and people are just, dogging him out in right field or wherever he was playing at the time. And he is just giving, and then as he leaves, he's waving back to him like this over-the-top kind of troll smile thing like that. So that kind of went on. The next game, he's playing left field, and he makes this sliding catch to end the game in foul territory. And it was a great catch over on the left side, obviously, because it's left field. Foul ground in the dirt. And as he catches it, he pumps his fist in the air, and he kind of gets up and he walks backwards, but he still has his face to the stands, and he does that over-the-top kind of wave. I thought that was pretty cool, because the guys that were sitting out there, and ladies, I'm sure, were giving him an earful, the New York fans. Him being from Buffalo, I'm sure he's used to those kind of, I don't want to say typical New Yorkers, but, they were giving him an earful. If you're sitting there at a ball game in late April, early May, and it's freezing, and there's not that many people there at Citi Field, I guess you can expect that. I don't know. It was pretty funny, though. And but then did you see the next day, I guess this was Thursday, he was arguing balls and strikes, and both he and Bell got thrown out, and then the fans trolled him back by doing that over-the-top wave to him. It's like everybody stood up and waved to him. And Winker was saying, in some of the interviews, he's like, it's just all in good fun. He's not, trying to hurt anybody's feelings or anything. But I think it's hilarious. I think it adds so much character to the game. It's not one of those unwritten rules that everybody talks about. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on Winker, how he's turned things around, Drew?
Well, he was a high top prospect.
Yeah.
So the Reds needed him to be able to come up and produce.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think he's going to be a pretty good player.
I really do, too. I mean, he's one of those guys that's clutch. And like we were saying earlier, he and Dietrich were the only ones at the beginning of the game that had any offense. Of those 8-0 runs, it was basically them. And still kind of mad at Bell for them taking both of those guys out of that game because the momentum just swung, not only with as bad as the bullpen was doing last night, but I think Winker's a guy that you can hang your hat on and just kind of, I don't want to say build a team around, but I mean, he's definitely the future of this team. And if he can keep things going and maybe not sit next to Scott Schebler on the bench, I don't know. No, that's not that's not nice of me to say that. That was a lame joke. I think he can turn things around and just kind of get the Reds on the smiling side of the scoreboard. So who knows? Who knows on that? Yes, again, don't forget to check us out online, ESPNradio1027.com. We've got a couple more minutes left in the show here if you want to give us a call, 270-782-1945. You can check us out on Twitter at Redlegs Radio Rep. So we talked about the bullpen a little bit. Let's move into kind of more talking about David Bell. He's been tossed 3 times in this early season, which is kind of sometimes, managers don't get tossed that much an entire season. Is that fire good, do you think, Drew? Is that something that the Reds can build around?
Well, against the Mets, he was, standing up for his player. And so far I've liked what I've seen out of David Bell.
Mm-hmm.
And, normally I'm pretty hard on managers,
right.
all but Dusty. I was a big supporter of Dusty.
Mm-hmm.
But, David Bell, he's, I like the fire.
Yeah. It's something that I think the Reds need, and it goes back to what we talked about earlier. It's the thing where if you're going to argue balls and strikes, maybe you should be swinging at something. We've talked, I know Todd's not here, we've talked till we're blue in the face about how if Tony Perez came up, and I hate to sound like an old guy, but if Tony Perez came up with the big red machine and there was runners on second and third and there was one out, he was going to swing off something off his shoe tops to drive it down the line, to do whatever he had to do instead of worrying about first base being open and getting my on-base percentage up because the ball was just a tad out of the strike zone and it was up for interpretation by the umpire. So to me, that kind of plays into that. And then again, showing some fire because now with all of the replays that go on in baseball, it's kind of taken that equation out of baseball. The days of Earl Weaver going out there and turning his hat backwards and getting up in front of the nose to nose with the umpire are over because of the replays. So do you think that, to your earlier point, Drew, I think this kind of adds a good aspect. Maybe not him getting thrown out all the time, but it shows fire. He's going to go out there. And he was basically pulling Winker off of the umpire, but then he turned around and got right back into his face. So
yeah, I mean, he gave Winker a nice shove.
Yeah.
Get out.
Yeah.
He did. And, but we'll see. I mean, David Bell, they're high on him up there.
Yeah. Well, and he comes from this old school baseball family, of course. Yeah. And, obviously the deep roots in Cincinnati. And I believe Tom was saying last night that he had on good authority, had some of the GM changes not happened in San Francisco, that David Bell probably would have been the manager in San Francisco. That's all intents and purposes. They were saying that had some changes in the front office not happen. People were pretty sure that he would have been there. So I'm kind of glad that the Reds got him. Again, family legacy, family history. So we're going to shut the show down. Definitely check us out next week. Drew, thanks so much for coming in on short notice. We had to kind of go to the reliever here on this and tap our right hand, sitting in for Todd. But anytime you want to come back, buddy, you're more than welcome. We love having you on. And as I've said many times, I think our texts sometimes are better than what we say on the show.
Enjoyed it, Jason. Thanks.
Always great. All right, everybody. Well, don't forget to check us out on ESPN Radio 1027.com. This show will be up on Monday in podcast form and also on iTunes. Have a good weekend, everybody.
This copyrighted broadcast is presented by authority of the Cincinnati Reds and may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form. And the accounts and descriptions of this game may not be disseminated without the express written consent of the Cincinnati Reds.